Megan Ryan, and this is Raymond Little, and the date is March 23rd, 2000.
You're going to talk a little louder. They might not hear you on the tape.
Okay. How did you feel about the war before you were a part of it?
Well, before I became part of it, I worked in a factory which made parts for the Air Corps, and I had an occupational deferment, so I was never going to be drafted. But then when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, then I really got angry, and I said, well, doggone, that's not right. Then the Germans declared war on us, and I said, well, now I know I'm going to enlist. So then I went down to Newark, to the post office, and I enlisted in the Air Corps. That's it. That's how I felt about the war.
When did you become part of the war?
Yeah, I enlisted in September the 30th, 1942.
And how old were you when you started?
How old was I started when I went into enlisted? I was 25 years old. Or 24.
And what was the average age of the other soldiers?
The average age? The average age ran between 18 and 25. They were the younger men, yeah.
Okay. What made you choose between, or did you get to choose between Army, Navy, and Marines and all the other?
Yes, when I went down to enlist, I decided I wanted to join the Air Corps. So I went into the Air Corps recruiting center, and I told them I wanted to become part of an air crew. So then they gave me a test and everything, and they said, yep, okay, you're qualified to become an Army Air Force air crew. So that's how I decided what to do.
And what made you choose it?
What made me choose it? I wasn't too anxious to crawl around in the mud. I wasn't too anxious to get off a battleship and swim. So I figured I'm better off going for a ride on an airplane.
How long did your training take?
Oh, well, I was in but that's the big thing. I was in training or training people from the time I went in to the time I got out. So most of the time I was either training people or being trained myself.
Okay. What was the hardest thing you had to do during the war?
The hardest thing I had to do during the war? The hardest thing I had to do, well, there wasn't really anything hard I did in my training, because being away from home, I guess, was the most of it, because you didn't get any money furloughs, but that was the hardest thing, being away from your friends and home. I guess that would be the hardest thing.
What type of plane did you work on?
What type of plane did we work on? Well, I went to school for B-17s. And that's the type of plane that I worked on for almost the years I was in the service.
And what did you do to the plane?
I was what you call a flight engineer. In other words, I was in the cockpit of the plane with a pilot and a co-pilot, and I made sure that we had fuel, all the engines were working properly, and everything was in proper order for flying.
Did you ever learn how to fly the plane?
I took flight training when I was in the cadets. When I enlisted, I went in as an aviation cadet. So I took flight training when I was an aviation cadet. So I learned to fly a plane then.
Was it hard?
No, it wasn't hard.
Did you ever fly a plane during the war?
During the war, the only time I took it was flight training as a cadet. The only time I flew it. No.
What was a normal day at the station?
What was a normal day?
Like, what did you do during the day?
Well, I was in so many different places that I can't say exactly what I did. Let's tell you when I first went in. I went in. I went to college training, where they trained you in physics and aeronautics and flying planes, and that would last That would last from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. After that, you could do whatever you wanted to do by yourself.
And what was your rank?
My rank when when I got out of the Army, my rank when I got out of the Army was corporal.
Where were you first stationed? Where were you first stationed?
Where, you're going to have to talk a little louder because I can hear you, but I don't know if the camera can hear you.
Okay.
Where was I first stationed?
Yeah.
I was first stationed at Butler University, Indiana, where they took flight crew training.
And where did you go after your first station? Where did you go after your first station?
Where did I go? I just told you. Went to Butler University in Indiana.
Sorry. Okay. What was the most thing that you remember doing at the station?
What was the
number one thing you remember doing at the station?
Well, going to college and learning physics and aviation and flying planes, and that was the most. Yeah.
Did you have any close friends in your station?
Did I have any close friends? Well, you always had friends, but then you always moved on to someplace else, so then you had to make new friends. So you had friends, but not real close. I had real close friends that I knew before I went in service, and they were in service. You know?
How did you feel when your friends from World War II switched to go to other places?
Well, I missed my close friends when they went to different places. You know?
Do you see any of the people you met in the war anymore?
No, I haven't seen anybody since. Most of them, believe it or not, most of them were from the South. I was the only boy from the North.
Who was the one person you missed from the war?
The most I missed?
Yeah.
My friend, Jack Larson. He was in cadets ahead of me, and he became a navigator. When he became a navigator on a B-24, and he was shipped overseas to Africa. And while he was in Africa, his bomber group flew on a mission to Palasi oil fields in Romania to bomb them. And his airplane got shot down, and he died. So I really missed him the most.
What did you think of your presiding officers?
I don't understand your question. You have to talk louder, or I can't hear you. It's neither can the camera.
Okay. What did you think about your higher-ranking officers?
The officers I had, the immediate officers, or the highest ranking?
The higher ones that
They were very competent. Yeah, the highest rank.
Did you was there anybody from your station that you didn't get along with?
But no, I got along with most people.
How do you feel now about the Japanese?
How do I feel now about the Japanese? Well, after we dropped the A-bomb on them and they surrendered, I really started feeling sorry for them because we really destroyed their country, and most of their young men got destroyed in this. But today, I had no grudge against them.
How did you feel about the atomic bombs before and after?
Well, I just said that when they dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, you know, I figured, well, they did that to save our lives of our soldiers, because if our soldiers had to invade Japan, they would have killed thousands and thousands of our soldiers. So actually, the atomic bomb really made the end of the war shorter. You know, even though it killed a lot of people.
Did other members of your family go into the military, and who?
Yes, they did. My brother Ralph, he went in the Army. He was drafted. He went in the Army. He was drafted, and he became a cook in the Army. So, and he was shipped overseas. And ended up in Italy.
How
My brother Richard, he was in the service too. He ended up in, that's right, I forgot about him. He ended up in the MPs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But he never went overseas. He stayed in the States.
how did you communicate with your friends and family?
Well, we communicated by letters. That's how we communicated. Here, you want me to read a letter I wrote my mother?
Sure.
This is here. I wrote this from Amarillo, Texas, January the 22nd, 1944. Dear Mom, well, I arrived here in good shape. After not sleeping for 2 days, making a lot of difference. The trip wasn't bad. The train from Chicago was really full. Tell Dad his present is still keeping me. I have half of it left. We start school soon, Tuesday. I hope it's all Flying Fortresses school. So maybe I'll see you in 6 months if everything goes all right. Send me Ralph's address. I forgot to get it, and Richard's too. My address has been changed to BK 128 instead of 129. Let me know how the car turns out. I am running short of words, so I'll sign off now. Bye for now. Your son, Raymond.
How often did you see your friends and family during the war?
How often did I see them?
Yeah.
Well, first furlough I got was about a year. Oh, it was a little over a year, about a year and a half. I got a furlough. Then I was able to go home. I got a furlough when I got transferred from the cadets to Amarillo. I got a furlough for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I was able to go home and see my family and friends.
And how did you entertain yourself during the spare time on the station?
Well, we had a lot of activities. We had recreation rooms. We had swimming pools. We had PXs. We had service clubs. So there was really a lot of things you could do while you're on the station.
Where did you usually go out to have a good time?
Well, once in a while we could get a pass, and that would mean we could go into town, and you could go into town for 24 hours. You know, sometimes you could get a 3-day pass, but and you could go somewhere else. So most of the time you go in town. The funny thing is, you go into town and you'd end up in a USO entertainment center where they entertained all the soldiers and everything, and they had dances and they had food. In one town I was in, believe it or not, the best centers were in churches. That was in Indianapolis. You could go there on a Sunday, you go to service, and then after service they'd give you a full meal, and they had bowling alleys and they had roller skating. So you had a lot of recreation.
And how old were you when the war ended?
I was 29. 29. I'm trying to think. 28 or 29. I forget.
Okay. And what is the one thing that you miss about the war?
Miss? I don't miss anything about the war. I wish wars didn't have to happen.
And how did you feel when the war was over?
Felt glad. I felt glad the war was over. No more killing, no more people being killed. A lot of young men died. A lot of young men never came back.
And how did you feel when practically all the B-17s were taken apart and sold to pieces?
Yeah, they took all the B-17s and they put it all on a big field in Arizona. They took them all apart. But they were obsolete, so they had to take them apart. Because they had B-29s after that, so B-17s were no longer useful, so they had to take them apart.
And what did you do after the war?
After the war, I went back to work in my work in Bendix Aviation. as a toolmaker.
That's all. Thank you.
That's it?
Yep.
Oh, gee, then I got over there. Oh, I was waiting for a whole million questions. That was easy.
Yeah.